I'm really happy to be here to try to bring some calm and direction to all the emotions that we're feeling. This is not an easy time, and people are going through a health crisis right now, and also a financial crisis. But the good news is that I'm going to take you through the benefits that are available to you. And I'm also going to talk more about what you can do in this time to make sure that you stay on the track to achieving financial security. For women in particular, financial security is even more important. We live longer, we start retirement with much less in our nest eggs. Our expenses in retirement are higher, and it's not because we're traveling the world and having fun necessarily. It's because our healthcare costs are significantly higher. And for many of us, we don't feel as comfortable about investing. And so sometimes we don't take as much risk as we need. And today we're going to be talking about that, making smart money moves to make sure that you're on the path to financial success for the long term. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this. And what I want to first go into is what benefits are available to you. Today, we're going to be talking about benefits through the CARES Act, which is also known as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It's quite a handful, so quite a mouthful. So I'm actually going to refer to it as the CARES Act. And today, in particular, we're going to be focusing on benefits that are available for you as an individual. Going forward, we're going to be having another presentation. We're going to focus in that presentation specifically on the benefits that are available if you own a business or if you're a solopreneur. So don't worry, we'll get to that, but today we're going to be talking about individuals. So it's a historic relief program that was passed just a few days ago. It's actually a $2 trillion fiscal stimulus package, one of the largest that we've ever seen in history. And what this means is that you are going to be benefiting ASAP from this. And in this slide, you can see very clearly that if you are single with no children, you are able to receive $1,200. And you can see that by this really beautiful green line that I'm pointing to right here. Now, once you reach $75,000, what ends up happening is that your benefit ends up getting reduced. Now, why is that? Well, the government wants to make sure that the people who receive these checks from the government get them ASAP and that they go to the people who need them the most. Now, let's say you have a child. If you have a child, you are able to get $500 per child added to that $1,200 check. So if you have one child who is under 17 and is a dependent, then you're going to be able to get, instead of $1,200, when you add that $500, you're going to get $1,700. That benefit for your child also over time starts to phase out as you get above the income limits. And there are different income limits for whether or not you are a single filer or you are a married couple. And for single filers, as I mentioned, it's about $75,000. For married couples, it's significantly more. You can see that your benefit doesn't stop until and go down until we are looking at past $150,000. Then it starts to come down. It's a great chart. You can take a look at this. It tells you very quickly whether or not you qualify. Now, the question you may have is whether or not is my child a dependent? It's pretty easy to figure that one out. If you have claimed that child as a dependent on your tax return in your 2018 or your 2019 tax return, guess what? Most likely they're going to qualify and be a dependent. If you have 2 children or 3 children that are listed, you get $500 for each one of those children. Now, how do you get this money? Well, it's going to be deposited into that checking account that is already registered with the IRS that you might receive refunds into automatically or is used to pay the IRS. If you don't have a checking account on file with the IRS, then what they're going to do is they're going to mail you a check. So you do want to make sure that you have the most recent address, especially if you've been traveling or moving in the last year. Now, there's another part that is important to know. This has to do with your retirement plans. If you're over age 70 and a half, or you've received what's called an inherited IRA, you've essentially inherited an IRA from another person, you are required to take out a minimum amount each year called a required minimum distribution. So what the government said is they said, guess what? You do not have to do that. And so for those individuals that normally would have to take out required minimum distributions from an IRA or a 401k or a 403b, any of these governmental or ERISA-based retirement plans, the government says you're not forced to take money out. For those of you who maybe have received an IRA or some type of retirement plan from your employer, from your parent or another family member, you too are typically required to take money out, and this is waived for you as well. Now, I know this doesn't sound like very exciting stuff, but it actually does get better because you are able to use some of these plans to be able to take money out without having to pay that normal penalty that you would have to pay if you take money out of a retirement plan before you're age 59 and a half. So typically, up until now, before age 59 and a half, if you had taken money out from your IRA or an early distribution from your 401k, the government would slap you with taxes at the highest bracket, and then they would put on a 10% penalty. What the government's saying is that, guess what? You can take up to $100,000 out, and you do not have to pay that 10% penalty. And guess what? We're going to be so nice that you don't have to pay the taxes on that $100,000 when you take it out right now. You have 3 years to pay that tax amount. And even better, let's say you get on your feet, and 2 years from now, you're feeling good, you're financially in a good place, you can actually pay that $100,000 back to your retirement plan and not owe any taxes whatsoever. So this is a really powerful tool that you have. You have your retirement plans. It's one of the few times you could ever go into those retirement plans and not have to pay a penalty immediately and not having to pay taxes. Now, that being said, I want you to know that this money is not free money. This is the money that you've put aside for your retirement. And so you need to go through the thought process of, do I need this money? Is this a must-have, non-negotiable to keep me afloat? And if the answer is yes, then you should use this. But if you can find other ways to get through this very difficult time, it's better to do so and not have to tap your retirement plan. Particularly because us women, we end up often going into retirement with less money than we really need. Now, we just talked about taking a distribution out from your retirement plan. There's another option. Many of you know that currently, with a 401k, you could take up to $50,000 out of that 401k at your employer where you're actively working in the form of a loan. What's unique and different is that they've upped that number by double. Now you can take out up to $100,000. Now, what does your account balance have to be in your 401k to be able to be eligible for that $100,000? That account balance just has to be $100,000. So this is very different than what we saw before. You're able to take dollar for dollar out. And so that means if you have an account balance of $100,000 or more, you can take a full $100,000 out. If you have an account balance of $75,000 in your 401k, you're going to be able to take out $75,000. Now, what's nice is that you're not going to have to start to pay back this loan. And true, it is a loan to yourself, but you still have to pay it back. But you have a 1-year grace period. This too is something to think about. It's a great option, but again, remember that you're borrowing from your 401k. And while you're borrowing from your 401k, that money is not working for you. It's not growing for you. So I do want you to make sure that you think about, is this something I really need to do? Unemployment benefits. So we are having right now, on average, 1 client a day reach out to us at Francis Financial with questions and concerns because they either have been let go or furlough. Now, there's no good news about that, but the CARES Act has put in some very important pieces to essentially cushion the blow. First off, the regular employment benefits that you are qualified for now, you get an extra $600 a week, $600 a week bonus on top of that. So essentially, your benefit went up by $2,400 on top of what normally you would expect from unemployment. Now, the other piece is that the wait time is 1 week. It's a very quick turnaround. And the process for applying for unemployment, it's actually quite straightforward and seamless. And if you're unsure how to do that, just reach out to us. But you put your information in, you put your bank account, and it gets direct deposited. And typically it's a lag time of maybe a week or 2. Now, this is something that's different. They've expanded these benefits for unemployment to people who typically were not qualified to receive them in the past. So if you are self-employed, you have your own business, you're a solopreneur, and you are finding yourself with little to no income, you need to apply for this. The second thing, let's say you are part of the gig economy. You're a 1099, you're an independent contractor. You too are qualified to be able to benefit from this unemployment insurance. So make sure that you use unemployment insurance. That's what it is there for. So I really want to make sure that you do that. And so far, this is something that's very much needed. 3.3 million people applied for unemployment last week, one of the highest numbers that we've actually seen in history. And most likely many more, that number is going to be increasing. So make sure that if you are not personally affected by this, that you're able to share this information with your friend and loved ones, because unfortunately, most likely, one of them will be touched in some way, and this is a great benefit to help them. Now, these are some benefits, and let me outline them again. Each person up to a certain adjusted gross income, of $1,200. If you're a married couple, it would be $2,400, and then a $500 credit for each one of the children that are considered dependents on your tax return. So this will be coming, and actually they'll be processed relatively quickly, so you should be seeing that check relatively soon. Now, something to think about, if your adjusted gross income was quite high in 2018, you may want to do your 2019 taxes and use your 2019 taxes to get, if your income in 2019 was a lot less than it was in the previous year, a lot less than it was in 2018. So these are just some tips. Again, reach out to us if you have any questions. We can set you up with a certified financial planner who eats this stuff for breakfast, and they can walk you through all of this with our helpline. All right, so we just talked about the individual benefits, big benefits that will put cash in your pocket from the CARES Act. We're going to come back to some more benefits of things that you'll see that have to do with credit cards, mortgage payments, and things like that. But what I want to do now is I want to talk a little bit about the stock market volatility and your retirement accounts, and in particular, what you should be doing. It's a very scary time. It's a very scary time, particularly for someone who hasn't been an investor with a lot of experience. We have seen record volatility, more so than we've seen for the last decade. And my news here is that it's not going to go away tomorrow. And so you need to make sure that you have the right information and you have the right outlook to get through these very difficult times, because there's nothing good and there's nothing easy about seeing your hard-earned money that you've saved in your retirement plan go down and drop in value. But I want to show you something. I love this chart. I love this chart. So this chart goes back to the year 2000. And don't judge me. My hair was still kind of really big in the 80s. I guess I really wanted to live those 80s and 90s. But had I been smart enough to invest $10,000 back in 2000, the value of what it would be today is $32,000. It's actually $32,422. But you'll see that that path that we see here, it's not a smooth sailing. It would be great if it was just this beautiful straight line from 10,000 up to 32,000, but we don't see that. In fact, that's not the case. You see a lot of choppiness and a big downturn around 2003, a huge downturn during the Great Recession of 2008, and increases up and down, but again, not a smooth sailing ride. We saw a big downturn also in 2007, 2008, and so here we are. So what does this mean? This means that what's most important is making sure that your money is fully invested and it's working for you. So I chose this chart, and yes, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here, but I want you to look at the bottom part of the chart first. And what this is it tells you that for the last 40 years, starting from 1979 through 2020, really just a couple days ago, if you had invested that $10,000, if you had that and stayed fully invested in the market, not taking your money out and going to cash, completely being invested during that entire time, your $10,000 would have grown to $623,000. That sounds pretty darn good to me. But if you had tried to market time and put the money in when you thought the market was going up, and take the money out when you thought the market was going to drop, and you happened to miss the 10 best days for the market during those 40 years, your account value would be a third of what you would have had if you had just played it cool and let your money grow and stay there. You can see how it goes down even further to 175,000 if you miss the best 20 days, 111,000 if you miss the best 30 days. If you miss the best 40 days, it would be 74, and my gosh, you have a paltry amount of money, only $50,000 if you had missed the best 50 days. Now, why is that important to know? Because the person who's able to tune out the noise and ride the ride of the market in good times and bad is the person who does well and succeeds financially in their investments long term. And you can see that clearly. $623,000 versus all the other scenarios. And might you miss the best day in a year? If your market timing, most likely you're going to miss the best day of the market because the market recovers when we least expect it. And last week was a perfect example where the market had double-digit returns, 10% plus returns in one day, times when we completely did not expect that. And had you moved to cash the week before, you would have completely missed out on that. Now, I want to show you, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but this time is different. I should go to cash because this time is different. But what I have to say, one of the most dangerous words I've ever heard are those three words. This time is different. Okay, you can tell I can't count. Those four words, this time is different. Those are the most scary words that you can tell yourself because we've had many different types of crises over the centuries. And what I can tell you is in all of them, the market has recovered handsomely within the 3-year period and within the 5-year period. And what this chart is showing you is it's showing you all of these very scary events. For example, September 2008, you can see that 3 years later, we had a 12% return. After 5 years, the market was up almost 50%, a 46% return. After the 2001 September 11th attacks, 3 years later, the market was up 40%. 5 years later, the market was up almost double digits to 81%. So what this is showing you is how over time the market recovers. It recovers from the down market, and you need to be in the market to get that and to be able to benefit from when it rallies. And so here's a wonderful statistic and quote from a research company that I highly admire, and it's Dimensional Fund Advisors. And they had a wonderful quote that they just put: sudden market downturns can be unsettling. Sticking with your plan puts you in the best position, the absolute best position to recover. Now, something you need to think about is that for many people, your investment horizon, how long this money is invested for, is much longer than you think. Many people think, okay, my money is invested till I retire. So my time horizon is the next 10 years or the next 20 years till maybe I reach age 65 when I'm going to retire. But that's just plain wrong. Your investment time horizon is not until your retirement date. It is out till age 95. And if you are a woman who has a grandmother, a mother, an aunt that has lived beyond 95, then you need to be planning even further. So for the majority of us on this call right now, our portfolio should be invested with the thought that this is for 30 years or more, to last us 30 years or more. And know that after a correction, which is what we saw in that line, a correction, typically the market comes back to an all-time high, some of the highest levels it's ever hit in 10 months. Now, instead of a correction, something much more significant, what we're touching into right now, called a bear market, what we have seen over time in all of these situations, that the market hits a new high within 24 months or 2 years. And also remember, if you're watching CNBC, FYI, I would do it with moderation. It's kind of like drinking a glass of wine. It's nice to have one, it's nice to have maybe two, but you got to be careful because if you have too much, you're not going to feel good the next day. It's the same way with the media and the press. If you are watching the media and the press and the market every single day, it's like having 3 glasses of wine a day. It's just not good for you. So make sure that you're getting this information in moderation. and know that your portfolio and the way it's invested is not the market. Because when you see CNBC, you see all of those, S&P 500 is up or down. That's 100% in stocks. And I can't imagine that anyone on this call has their 401k or any of their accounts 100% in stocks. Most likely you have some beautiful bonds. And those bonds are your friend. They are cushioning the portfolio. They are really making sure that that portfolio holds its value. So know again that what you see the S&P 500 doing or the Dow, it's not your portfolio. It's probably a part of your portfolio, but it's not your whole portfolio. So you're not suffering the same losses as what you might see in the headlines on at the Wall Street Journal or CNN. So that's really important in kind of putting it in perspective. So what if you are close to retiring? What if you're retired? What do you do in this environment? Well, the most important thing is not to panic and to ride it out. Now, it could be that this situation has scared the bejeebers out of you, and the fluctuations in your retirement accounts have kept you up at night. Well, that does tell you a very strong message that you need to consider. Most likely, the way your portfolio is allocated, the amount between stocks and bonds, you have too much in stocks. But now is not the right time to correct it. Once the market recovers, you can go and you can make that shift. And you can make that shift of taking some of those stocks and beefing up and adding to your bonds. But if you do that now, after stocks have been so pummeled, you will never be able to recover from the losses. So you're going to have to get your suspenders on. You're going to have to figure out what you need to do, but you're going to need to ride this out till your portfolio recovers, when you can then make that shift to the mixture of stocks and bonds that doesn't quite have so much risk in it and doesn't have as much volatility up and down. And remember that when you do retire, it's not like you need 100% of your money from your retirement account that day. You're going to be having most likely Social Security. You may have some other income sources as well. And then you would be tapping your retirement. So know that, it doesn't have to be extremely conservative just because you're retiring. And if you are taking distributions, if you are looking at that retirement plan and living on it, or any accounts you're taking money from your retirement accounts, not only can you use the cash for distributions that you have in there, but you can also use those beautiful bonds. Because for the vast majority of you, if you've invested in really high quality bonds, those bonds are up significantly and have done very well over the last year. And so you can use those bonds to take distributions and not be forced to have to touch any of your stocks for distributions. You might have 2, 3, 4, even 5 years of distributions you can take from your retirement plan before you would ever be forced to use any of those stocks, to liquidate any of those stocks, to put distributions, take money out. And within 4 or 5 years, you bet that we're going to be out of the situation that we're in right now. So know your immediate cash needs. Know what you do need for cash, and try to build an emergency fund to get that in place. Reassess your risk, and that's what I was talking about. If you're having sleepless nights, it means that in the future you might want to take a little bit less risk out of your portfolio because it might be too risky. Now, if you do have losses, you may want to profit from tax loss harvesting. This wouldn't be in your retirement plan. This would be outside your retirement plan. But we can talk a little bit more about this. Essentially, it would be, the S&P 500 is down 15%, so you sell it and you have a 15% loss. And what's nice about that 15% loss is that you can use it to reduce your taxes. Now, if we sell that S&P 500, I don't want you to have that money go into the cash, because we want that money to be invested. So maybe you buy some other type of stock index with the proceeds, because we still want to make sure that if we're 40% in stocks and 60% in bonds, that we maintain that 40% of our money that's in stocks. So if we sell the S&P 500 mutual fund, let's say that's 5% of our portfolio, we need to take that 5% and buy something else also in stocks that's roughly similar. What that does is that keeps you invested, keeps you growing for the long term, but by tax loss harvesting, that's a fancy way of saying that we just created a bunch of losses that you can use to reduce your taxes ASAP in 2020. So there's a lot going on here, and I know that it's quite complex. So we can definitely talk a little bit more about this in the Q&A section, but I don't want to hold us up, because the next section is really talking about what do I do in the short term? Do I make changes to my retirement plan? And for the majority of individuals, you should not make drastic shifts to your retirement plan. The last thing you want to be doing is making a big financial decision, something that's going to impact you for the long term based on emotion. Because when the market goes down, it's human instinct. It's essentially we innately want to take action. We want to do something. So the best thing to take action is start to educate yourself about your portfolio. Understand what you hold, whether it's a stock and a bond, what the difference is between the two. Getting a better idea of what kind of investor you are. Are you a risky investor or maybe a less risky investor? And take other steps to improve your finances. And it's not just about with your investing. There are so many ways that you can improve your finances outside of investing. And those are some of the things that we're going to look at right now. So if you're concerned about retiring right now, you could always retire at a later date. For most people, they don't retire 100%. It's not the retirement of our parents or our grandparents. We tend to be still very active, and many of us active in our careers, where we slowly ramp down. And often we become consultants. We tend to do work in the gig economy. We might start a business. And these all might be things that are interesting for you. You could consider downsizing your home. I have to say, I think there will be a good number of people who, after this experience, realize that where they're living, maybe it's a metropolitan area, it's not where they want to be long term. Or it could be the opposite. But as you look at your financial situation, one of the best ways you can improve your financial situation is downsizing your home or moving to a less expensive part of the country. And the most important thing that we should all be doing, and this is whether or not you are coming up close to retirement or in retirement, each of us need to revisit our spending patterns. I will tell you, I did this. I printed out the last 3 months of all my credit card statements and my checking account, and I went through with my little highlighter, and I went through and said, that makes sense, and then I circled, you know what, I can reduce that. Guess what, I can stop that membership. This is something that you need to do now, especially now, because you most likely are paying for services that you're not even able to take advantage of right now because of the coronavirus. A great example for me, we are part of Zeal, which is an in-home massage service, and you pay a monthly fee. Well, you would have expected them to stop the monthly fee because there are no massage therapists that can come to your home right now because of the stay-at-home order. But they were still charging us. So we were able to, again, put a stop to that. What's really powerful about the experience of what we're all living through right now is that it helps us realize what we truly need to live and what we can do without. And I will be very honest, my spending on discretionary items has gone down by 75%. And when I say discretionary items, it's the eating out, it's the clothes, it's grabbing the cappuccino on the way to work. It's those small things that add up significantly. And I bet many of you on this call also have seen your expenses reduce significantly. So this is a really powerful time to go inside and really think about, what do I really need? And I know for me personally, I'm walking out of this experience with a very different view about what I truly need. So with that, I want to go to, actually, I think I just skipped a couple pages. So let me go back. I apologize. We're going to go next. So this is something I want to talk about as well. How to be financially resilient. And as difficult as what we're experiencing is and going through, it's it's not something new. And when I say not something new, the older you get, the more likely you are to experience a significant sharp drop in income due to a layoff, an illness, a divorce, other life event, outside things like we're dealing with right now. And you can see in this chart that I put together, if you're between age 55 and 61, 92% of you have had a 10% drop in your earnings at least 4 times in your life. It's a big number. And 75%, 3 out of 4 of you, have gone for more than a year without any earnings. And when you get back to this on the right, all the way to the right, ages 66 to 70, nearly 100% of individuals have had at least 4 drops of 10% or more in their income. And 93% of those people have gone a full year, 365 days without earning a cent. So while things like we're going through right now feel very shocking, what I'm trying to say here is that we shouldn't be shocked. And these types of things happen again and again. And so we need to be prepared. So smart moves that you can make right now are doing exactly what we just talked about, of tracking your spending, of cutting your costs, starting to build an emergency fund, and that's 3 to 6 months of your living expenses. And maybe you can't do that right now, but when you get back on your financial feet, you bet that paying off credit card debt and building that emergency fund is your number one priority. Eliminating high interest debt. And high interest debt I liken to termites eating the foundation of a house. They are small, but boy, do they make a big dent and eventually can destroy a home. It's the same thing with high interest debt. Looking at new ways to make more money, getting creative, offering seminars, thinking about things that you can do to increase your earning potential. Maybe looking into refinancing your home, looking at your property and casualty insurance for your renter's insurance, homeowner, or auto, and looking at how you might be able to reduce that, as well as looking at life insurance, disability, and long-term care. And this is really important too. It's not only reviewing these different types of insurances to make sure that you're not paying too much, but these are the insurances that actually help you and protect you against this, against having catastrophic situations where something happens and you don't have the right insurance in place and you find that you can't survive financially. That's why you need that life insurance, disability, potentially long-term care insurance. It's why you pay for renter's insurance and homeowner's insurance and auto insurance. And you hope you never have to use it, but my gosh, if you do, you are so blessed to be able to have it. And then, of course, your eligibility for assistance programs. And that is through the CARES Act that we talked about with unemployment, the checks that will be sent out, and as I mentioned, our future seminar that we're going to be doing, particularly for business owners, with millions of dollars that you are able to gain access to. And most importantly, what's amazing about this money available for business owners and solar entrepreneurs is that it can be free money, never having to pay it back. So very powerful. All right, so let me give you some more information that's going to have a direct effect on your bottom line. Your taxes are not due on April 15th. They now are due on July 15th. That also means that if you owe taxes like I do, you don't have to pay that bill until April 15th. Now, if the shoe is on the other foot and you're expecting a refund, what I want you to do is do not delay. Get your tax return in as soon as possible so you can get that refund in your pocket. Credit cards. Credit card companies are lengthening their payment deadlines. They're offering lower interest rates. They're waiving fees. And so to find out what's happening with your credit cards, get on the phone, go to their website, and see if you are eligible. And there's no problem and no negative in telling them to reduce your interest rate and explaining that you're in a hardship situation. Very important. And what we have found is that half of the individuals who have done that have been able to have success. The other piece to know is that this in no way hurts your credit score. So that's really important to know too. Mortgage payments. So you can suspend payments for your mortgage for 90 days. And we had a very good question. One of the women just wrote in asking, I can pay my mortgage, but do I use that 90-day reprieve just to give myself a little buffer? And this is my answer to you. It may make sense. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and the 90 days, essentially 3 months of not having to make mortgage payments is the difference between being able to build that emergency fund or pay down some of your credit card debt, then you should. You should take that benefit and suspend your mortgage payments. Now, what does this do to your credit? Is it going to hurt your credit? If you contact your mortgage company, they know you're on plan, you're not going to have this in any way affect your credit. Because what ends up happening, what they do, is that they take that 3 months of payments that you haven't made and they just tack it on to the end of your loan. So it's not a bad thing to do. And for a lot of people, it makes a big impact in them being able to whittle down credit card debt and start to build that emergency fund. Student loans. So student loans interest will be waived indefinitely. However, this only applies to federal student loans, not those private student loans. So something to think about, you could ask for a deferment or a forbearance. If you need to halt the payment of your loan, that's another option. So this is a great option, particularly for student loans. Unemployment insurance, we talked about. This is a really important piece. It provides you partial income. Each state has their own eligibility requirements. But again, most important thing on the slide is that this is for if you are fired or furloughed. And furloughed means that you are still considered an employee, but you're not getting paid. What you want to do and to better understand if you're furloughed is, are they still paying your health insurance? So you need to get some of that information. Most companies still do pay your health insurance. And what we've done here is we've added the website where you can go to actually go ahead and apply for those unemployment benefits. And so that's www.labor.newyork.gov. So a lot of information. I know that we went through it quickly. This is typically a much longer Wednesday webinar series than we're used to, but I thought it really important and key to make sure that we cover all of this information. And Maggie just let me know there was another question that was just sent in, and someone mentioned that she'd really like to catch up on her credit card bills, and the company called up her credit card company, did exactly as what we had told her to do, which is great. They're going to allow her to miss payments. However, they're still charging me interest on my balance. Does it make sense to pay the minimum payment instead of taking a payment holiday? Well, what I would do is if your credit card interest rate is significantly high, let's say it's a 12% or 13%, then I am not so impressed by their offer to miss payments because the interest rate you're paying is really astronomical. If you have a lower credit card interest rate of maybe a 5 or 6%, then taking them up on the offer is not so bad because that interest rate is a lot lower. So that would be something that I would mention as well. So another person wrote in and said that they have $100,000 saved for retirement in a 401k, which kudos to you, that's fantastic. However, they were just laid off. But they expect to be back at work by the summer, and they need to make, ends meet for their basic expenses. Should they borrow from the 401k to possibly pay off their credit card bills? So that is a good question. Um, what I would say is this. You typically, if you borrow from a 401k, you have to still be employed by that employer. If you're no longer employed by your employer, the 401k loan options close and disappear. However, if you have another retirement plan, let's say an IRA, you can take that $100,000 up to $100,000 out without having to pay the 10% penalty and without having to pay taxes on that for 3 years. So in that situation, what I would say is, yes, take it out, pay off the high interest credit card debt, and then do everything you can to pay back that $100,000 or whatever dollar amount you had taken out within the next 3 years so that that money can go back in and start to work for you. Really important. And Maggie, I just want to check in before we wrap up. I know we have about 2 minutes left. Any other questions that came in today?
Yes, I think you probably didn't see this one that came in over chat. So this one is saying, I just was laid off, but had saved some money and planned to contribute before laying off. With the CARES Act and unemployment, I should be okay, but I'm wondering if I should still make a 401k contribution even when unemployed, or just I'd love to hear your tips on what I can do.
Okay, great question. So if you're unemployed, you cannot make a 401k contribution to your employer's retirement plan. So once you're not employed any longer, that 401k, it's yours, but you can't take money out in a loan. You can't necessarily make contributions. Now, one of the provisions that I'm going to actually go back to that might be interesting for you is that you can, from a 401k, you can't take the loan out if you've been let go, but you could take out that $10,000, $100,000. So you could take that out from your 401k if you're no longer working there. But again, you can't contribute to it and you can't take out the loan. Now, that being said, what can you do? What can you do? What you can do is you could contribute to an IRA. As long as you have some type of earned income, you can contribute to an IRA. But for most people, the better thing to do is to beef up their emergency fund so that you don't fall into the trap of going into high credit card debt. Great.
Okay. Thanks, Stacy. It looks like those are all the questions that we have. So as a reminder, we'll be sending out this recording. And yes, thank you, Stacy. Stacy's going to be presenting again next week. The link you'll see on your screen here, and we'll be sending this out as well, how the CARES Act affects your small business. You don't want to miss that next week. And I want to thank you, Stacy, for a really excellent presentation. There's a lot of information in there, and it was really, really helpful for all of us today. Thanks to everyone for joining us as well. We'll be following up over email.
Thank you so much. And again, I just want to mention, if you know anyone that is a solopreneur or a small business owner, what I'm going to be taking you through on Monday at 10 a.m., and we will record this too so you can send it out, is essentially how to get cash for your business. And there are some fantastic ways to get cash from the CARES Act that you do not have to repay. So it's really a no-brainer and a must-have, and it's also very timely. Sorry, because these checks are going to start to be written in the next couple weeks, and you want to make sure that your application is in and that you're one of those first people that's going to be eligible to be able to qualify for this. So we'll be going through a lot of great information. So thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll send this link out to everyone in case you didn't have a chance to write it down. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you so much, Stacy. It was really, really great.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.